their mandatory attendance at a rink, or they lose their spot on a team, or that they're letting their team down, to the extent that people are potentially taking risks and coming to the rink if they have any symptoms or concerns. So that will be something that will be a little bit different from a hockey culture standpoint, but we think obviously very important, and we'll build some of that into some of our programming and how we look at things as the season progresses. Okay, first of all, arena updates. Those of you that were on the call in June, we'd let you know that we had some positive information from the City of White Rock as regards to Centennial Arena, which is now in and up and running, and we've utilized it a little bit in the summer as well. But we were unsure of the other arenas. I'm pleased to announce that the City of Surrey has come through for us. It was nip and tuck a little bit. There was a lot of lobbying. We led a coalition or a partnership with the other hockey associations within the City of Surrey, as well as figure skating and ring ed and other groups, and really worked hard to appeal to the city to essentially change their original plan, which wasn't really going to work that well for us from an ice perspective. And as you can see on here, there's a few particular city councilors in here that deserve a lot of credit for going to bat for kids in our community. I have them listed on here. I don't want to get too political or anything, or take too big of a political statement, but there's definitely a split on the Surrey Council, and these councillors really stepped forward and took our case and made sure there was some action with the city staff, and put some pressure on the rest of the councillors to make sure that kids were put at the center of the decision making. So we really appreciate their foresight in doing that. If you get a chance to chat with any of them or want to send a letter somewhere, those would be the people that deserve some credit. So our private facilities that we use, so as you know, we use Great Pacific Quorum and Excellent Ice. We've worked with them and are receiving our ice allocation from them. We've just gotten it kind of over the last week or so. And the ice that we have is looking pretty good. There's obviously some changes. Some of the ice times are shorter. An hour 15 ice times are now they're all hour ice times, and there's bigger gaps in between ice session for cleaning and turnover of people in the building, that type of thing. So it affects our overall ice allocation slightly, but relative to other associations in the Lower Mainland, we are well off for ice, and not quite normal, but pretty close to where we would normally be. So we'll be able to do a lot of things that we plan to do, and ice won't be a huge limiting factor. So we're excited about that. Again, lots of new protocols in the buildings. For example, right now we're at Centennial Arena, where we're limited to 20 skaters and 2 coaches on the ice, and the activity there is limited to drills and skills activities for now. That'll change soon, but the big ones there are there's no access to there's no access to the building for dressing or changing. Participants are expected to show up dressed and ready to go, wait in the parking lot until it's time to enter the building. You can't even hang out in that lobby area out front by the big bear there. They don't want people congregating around there. So it's a little bit of getting used to changing at home, or in some cases people have been changing in the car. And no parents are allowed in the building as well. So some of these things will hopefully be relaxing as we move into the different phases, but we do have to work with that right now. And again, each facility is a little bit different. That's an example from Centennial Arena, which we've been doing for almost a month now, and people have gotten used to it. I think it's a minor inconvenience, but I think people are reacting quite well to that. One reminder, and I'll try and remind everyone again, is if you have a chance to go buy some skate guards, it might be a worthy investment, because kids will come dressed and walk from the car to the arena in some cases, and they come in handy. Okay, so I'll get into a little more detail on the PCHA, so Pacific Coast Amateur Hockey Association, return to play framework. So this is our kind of our governing body locally that runs our leagues and that type of thing. So as I mentioned, I chaired the committee. We had hours and hours of planning. We had some real strong people on this committee with a lot of good connections, and we dug into it pretty deeply. But again, the caveat is this: everything that we do, all these plans and framework that we put in place is dependent on approvals from ultimately the provincial health level, but via sport, BC Hockey, Hockey Canada, etc. But we have been working with them along the way to kind of build this out. So there could be some changes, but it gives us a plan A, I guess, to get us rolling and get started with. So as you can see, we're level 1, which we're calling the development and prep phase. Essentially, it's right now as well, but highlighted on here starting in Labor Day, which is our traditional kind of start to the hockey season, and running through to about Thanksgiving. So there'll be no interclub games during this time frame. Normally, we'd be having exhibition games and those type of things throughout the month of September. We won't be doing those. We won't, Semi won't be playing Cloverdale or Surrey or anyone at this stage of the game. The focus will be on development sessions, fun sessions, skill sessions, that type of thing through that time frame. Again, with a gradual loosening of restrictions, and we're hoping that loosening starts to lead to what would look a little bit more like gameplay within our own association groupings, so with our own kind of internal training cohorts, which I'll go into in a minute. So we could maybe play some 4-on-4 and 3-on-3 and do some scrimmaging and those type of things as we move through the month of September. But that does depend on some approvals before we get there. We're recommending to all the associations that there's no mandatory evaluations during this period. As I mentioned earlier, we don't want someone feeling that they have to come to the rink on Tuesday, September the 8th, because if they don't, they're going to lose a chance to make a team. So we'll take that approach as well and kind of stretch out any evaluations that we're doing. And again, I'll get into some more detail on that in a little bit, but health and safety take precedence over any team selection. And really, what's the rush to get to any team selection anyways, if we're not getting the full game action until later on. Okay, so that's where we are right now. Phase 1, we've got a plan for that, and I'll get into the semi-specific planning for that as we move through this. I just want to give the overall lay of the land from PCHA. So level 2, and this is we're calling sort of the return to competition phase. Again, as I mentioned, around Thanksgiving, early October, and we're hoping running through to the end of the hockey regular season and start of playoffs, so early February area. And this would where we begin our team formation, move into a formal evaluation process to try and select our teams. And our goal would be to progress quite quickly at that point, if we can, to league games for the Atom to midget group, U11 to U18, both in the rep and recreational leagues. Traditionally, we have like a long period of exhibition games and tiering rounds and those type of things. We probably won't go through that just because we don't want to be changing groups or cohorts or those type of things. And we will already be trying to catch up on lost time so we can get to some meaningful league games a little bit quicker. Our U8 and U9 teams, so that's our novice group, they'll start to form their teams and get prepared for gameplay. They'll start kind of their game action a little bit later October, November, which is normal for those age groups anyways. And our scheduling will be done in what we're calling competition cohorts. And again, I'll get into the cohort concept here in the next couple of slides. And again, we've got, as part of this PCHA plan, we've built in some contingencies and things if conditions change or approval is delayed to move to this phase. For example, if we are restricted a little bit into moving into full-blown league play across the Lower Mainland, one of the options that we could look at is more regionalized gameplay. For example, Semi could play just within the confines of the city of Surrey and we could play our neighboring associations at Surrey and Cloverdale only. So we wouldn't be traveling to Langley or Coquitlam or those type of places. That's one option. It may be modified gameplay if we're limited in roster size. We may have to have smaller rosters and play 4-on-4 instead of 5-on-5. So those are some of the things that we would look at as potential intermediate steps if there's any changes in conditions or that type of thing. So we do have plans for that. Our next level is playoffs and championships. So again, that's really to be determined, but our goal would be to really hope to get through a full season. And by that time, we're looking at a relatively normal setup for playoffs with precautions and perhaps cohorts and those type of things at that time. Okay, so speaking of cohorts, just to highlight that, I think people will become familiar with the terminology, although it's a little bit different in a sport perspective. But we're hopeful that by using the cohort model, it'll allow us to get to more regular play, that we could play 5-on-5 regular hockey in these cohorts. Perhaps the older age groups could play contact hockey, those type of things. That's the message we're getting from Hockey Canada and other governing bodies, and other provinces are looking at similar models. So we're looking at that, and again, the cohorting helps reduce the risk a little bit of interaction with large groups of people, and not really being able to control who's in contact with whom. So this will allow that to work a little bit easier. Still lots of questions with regards to that. How does it impact with kids in other sports? What if you're doing other activities? Those type of things. We're waiting on a little bit of guidance from Via Sport on that side of it, but so far they've liked the plan that we've come through with at PCHA. I'm sure there'll be some tweaks and things to it though. So two types of cohorts. One is the internal training cohort. So this is essentially what we're looking at for the month of September, when we're in semi only. We're not going outside of our boundaries to work with other associations. So we would look at making cohorts within our own group. We need to get some information on what the size of those will be, those type of things. So we're awaiting that information right now as we start to build out schedules and assign people to different groups. But again, same concept, and we hope that'll allow us to transition towards tryouts and player assessments and those type of things, and again, more regular play as best we can. The other type of cohort that we're looking at is a competition cohort. So this is when we move towards playing outside associations. So a little bit of a different concept, where instead of playing in a full-blown league of 8 or 9 teams where you have a schedule laid out over months, and Team A plays Team B, and Team B plays Team C, and they play D and E, and you really can't control who's playing who, other than looking at the schedule. But it's a tangled web of which, who's come in contact with whom. We would look at smaller cohorts that would change throughout the season, and every time that a cohort is changed, there would be an appropriate buffer. We're still waiting to hear whether it's 10 or 14 days. And then you would be scheduled into a new cohort. There's an example on the next slide. I'm not sure how well it'll show up on people's screens, but I'll try and talk to it a little bit here. So in this example, if you have a traditional league or a flight of 9 teams, let's say this is a recreational flight in Pee-wee C, for example, where you'd have 9 teams that would normally play each other once or twice a year over a long-term schedule. They would instead be broken down into 3-week cohort segments, and semi would play 2 other teams during that 3-week period. So for example, weeks 1 to 3, you'd have a cohort that would be semi, Cloverdale, and Langley, and they would play we'd only play those 2 other teams for 3 weeks, 1 or 2 times each. Then we would take a break in the schedule. Some of those will fall at natural break times, hopefully at Christmas and long weekends and those type of things. But we'd build in a break where you'd still be able to practice, but you wouldn't have games with other associations. And then you'd move into the next cohort schedule, and you'd have another 3 weeks where this time you're playing South Delta and Surrey, and you'd play them over 3 weeks, et cetera, as we move through the season. So that keeps the group sizes within that cohort to roughly 50 kids, and we're able to keep a tighter lid on things. And if there is any concerns with one of the cohorts, the other groups could carry on, for example, and we'd be able to, worst case scenario, shut down one cohort and deal with that group if we have to. So still some things to work out within that, but we do have another probably 8 weeks till we get to that stage anyways, and we're waiting for some information from Via Sport, and other sports are doing a similar models or similar ideas, so we'll get a more clear picture as we move to that. But just wanted to give people an example of how we could more comfortably move towards somewhat normalcy with regards to a league schedule, and we're hoping that can come as soon as Thanksgiving timeframe. Okay, so the specific semi-hockey plans around this. So this is the new world that we're kind of working in with the direction from these governing bodies thus far. So what does it mean for us? And in particular, what does it look like in this initial development prep phase? So I've kind of got it broken down a bit by age grouping here and age category. So just highlight a few things. Our U6 and 7, so these are our old terminology would be Hockey 1, Hockey 2. So these are mostly new kids in some cases to the association. We're going to delay their start slightly. Normally they would start third week of September. We're going to push that back to early October, just because we're waiting a little bit of guidance on how we can deal with teaching new skaters to skate without really encroaching on their bubble or within 6 feet of them. And also, right now, the restrictions around not having parents in the building and those type of things really would take away from the experience for young hockey players or first-time hockey players. So we're hoping that by early October, some of those things will loosen up, and we'll have the ability to have some parents in the building assisting and watching their kids and supporting them, that type of a thing, and maybe some other strategies, whether it's cohorts or others, to help these kids get a real good first experience at hockey. So for that reason, we're looking at potential delay, and we'll announce those dates shortly once we kind of get a better idea of our ice allocation. Our U8 and U9 players, so the novice age group, we'll look at placing them in loose kind of skill-based groups. I think they're probably used to a bit of that from their past season, where they had combination of balanced teams and skill groups. For this part, we'll work in relatively loose skill groups. These won't be precise rankings of, top 15 kids or anything along those lines. It'll be grouped as best we can so they can train together during that time frame. And we're hoping that we can hit a couple times a week for those kids getting on the ice, and normally they begin around mid-September. So 2-3 weeks of that kind of activity for that group is what we're targeting. For the U11 to U18, and excuse me, you're going to have to get used to this new terminology. I am as well. So if you're used to the old terms, that's Atom to midget categories. So now called U11 and U18. In the recreational side of it, so this is our C teams, we'll place the kids in cohort practice groups. They'll be kind of loosely balanced, but this won't be your final team. Probably be potentially smaller numbers than your final team would be, and not necessarily the same kids that you would be playing with once we get to the final team. So we'll put people in those groups, and we'll have a combination of practices, and hopefully, as I mentioned earlier, being able to evolve that to mini games and more competitive activities. We know that a bantam or midget C kid doesn't get super excited about practicing over and over and over again. So we will be looking at ways to make that engaging and challenging and fun for all those kids. And the bonus would be that everyone is going to pick up, I would think, a little bit extra skill development and have an opportunity to get better at their game before they get to real competition and game playing. So that's kind of a bonus, we think. And we're aiming to try to get 2 ice times per week for those groups, and they normally start mid-September. We don't have all of our ice allocation yet, so when I say aiming for 2 times per week, I'm not guaranteeing that it's going to be 2 times per week every week, but that's kind of the target that we're looking for that group, and hopefully it averages out to about those numbers. Around Thanksgiving, we would look to have a little bit of a schedule break, essentially a change in cohort, and do our team assignments at that point, and hopefully come out of the Thanksgiving break or around that time with kids put onto the teams that would be with for the rest of the season, and move forward from there. On the rep side of the programming, again, for the starting in Adam or U11 up to our midget U18 groups, we won't have mandatory evaluation ice times in early September. So if you're used to your Labor Day weekend being shot year after year with mandatory tryouts, that won't be the case this year. So take that as a bonus, perhaps. We will have some ice time, particularly aimed at the Adam and Pee Wee age group over that weekend, but again, not mandatory. So if the cabin is calling or anything like that, this might be a year to take advantage of it. And what we'll do is we'll place the kids in skill-based groups based on their past season's team. So we do have a formula for this, for those of you that have been through our evaluations in the past in the Pee Wee to midget age groups. The day one of your tryout, if you can remember that, is you usually start in a group based on where you played last year, and that's normally a 1-day skill evaluation. So think of that 1 day as being potentially 30 days with that particular grouping. So you'll theoretically be playing with like skilled players as much as possible and training with them over that time period. And again, it'd be a skill development focused practices. Again, we hope this is an opportunity for kids to take advantage of some extra development, get their game really fired up. By the time we do get to gameplay, we hope they'll be better, stronger players. And in both sides of it, on the recreational and the rep side, we will use a combination of our professional skill development people and some parent coaches and things as well, but it'll be planned out practices and again, an opportunity to get better. For those on the rep side, we're aiming to try to get 3 to 4 ice times per week. And there will be, some of this will be covered in the rep fee that you've paid already for your tryout fee. But as we move into the later part of September and things, we will be adding, more ice time and instruction over and above that. So there will be some extra fees for that. Once we get a better picture of how much ice time and instruction that is, we'll be able to give better ideas of that. So this would be traditionally what you would pay to your team as a rep team fee for your extra ice and instruction and coaching costs and those type of things. So think of it that way. And then once we get closer to that Thanksgiving time frame, we would progress to the next phases, 2 and 3 of the evaluations. Again, you're familiar with it, the matrix model that we use, the progression matrix that we flow through to eventually get to our teams. And we'll have a better idea what that looks like a little bit later, whether we do all divisions in one fell swoop around a weekend, or whether we do Pee Wee 1 week, Adam the next week, Anthem the next week, that type of a thing. It's going to depend a bit on access to ice and how that lays out with the exact logistics of it. Some other considerations to look at. As of right now, there will be there's a sort of a ban on tournaments until at least December, and that'll be reevaluated around October, whether there'll be Christmas tournaments or those type of things. I would really highly doubt there would be any travel or tournaments at all outside the Lower Mainland over the course of the season. There's potential that in the new year there may be local tournaments and things that you can go to, but I don't anticipate traveling to the island or Okanagan, or certainly not to the U.S. For tournaments. So potential cost savings there is the plus side. We'll have to find other ways to make sure those experiences can still happen in terms of team building and team bonding and those sort of things that go on at tournaments, though, because they're a big part of hockey. We don't know, a couple things we don't know, if there's any restrictions on additional training outside of cohorts. So if someone is going to power skating or other classes and those sort of things, how that might impact the cohort structure. So we're waiting for some guidance on that one. We don't know whether there'll be provincial championships for the rep side or any of those type of things. Those would normally take place in March. But a little ways off to kind of look at that, but it's something that hasn't been announced yet. We're looking at options for streaming video and those type of things in the arenas in the event that we're limited on the number of parents and spectators that can be in the arena. We want to try and find a way to keep families and parents engaged with their kids' activities. So we're looking at a few options there. Nothing to confirm quite yet, but there's a few things that are on the market that are potential. And the last one on this topic, obviously, is the flexibility and communication is going to be key. Everyone's patience has been great so far. I know it will get challenged a little bit more as we move into September, and some things will definitely be different. But we do appreciate the flexibility that will happen. I think we've all learned it in all aspects of life right now, and hockey's no different. Next steps for us. So right now we're just completing our ice inventory and really looking at how that allocation is going to work, what that scheduling is going to look like. At the best of times, that's a puzzle. That takes a lot of work. There's a lot of different variables going into that. So this year, even more so with some of the challenges of gaps between ice times and those type of things. But we're looking at building that out. And then from there, we would look at creating these initial internal cohorts and communicating that out to you guys for what some schedules might start to look like for each of the divisions. So that's we're frantically getting to that stage, which honestly is not that different than any other year. We're usually spending the later part of August working on drilling down into all those details anyways. It's just made a little bit more challenging this year, obviously. Recruitment of volunteers. So this is going to be vital this year. It always is. We do rely on the talent of people within our association giving up their time to help with a number of different roles, and it's no different this year, except there may be even a greater demand for it. We may have smaller cohort groups as we go through the early part of things, so that would necessitate more people around to manage those groups. So we may be looking for people to be temporary cohort managers, not necessarily team managers for an entire year, but helping with communication within a cohort group. The same goes for safety people. So the HCSP trained safety people will be a more vital role than ever. We think that might be a way to get into the arena and watch the kids play. So if you're certified in that role, that might be a bonus for you, but we will be looking for people to step into that role, more people than ever, and maybe a little bit more enhanced role for those people to help be our communicators at the team or cohort level of any safety things that come down the pipe, and monitoring where the players are at in terms of their adherence to all of our protocols and policies and those type of things. And again, our next step is just continuing to really refine and communicate those safety protocols. There's new things coming in all the time that we're looking at, and we want to make sure that we're trying to provide as much up-to-date information as possible there. So we'll work on updating our website and keeping that information there. We'll use our newsletters and other communication tools to make sure that gets out to people. And once we get to the formation of these cohorts, we'll build a messaging system within there, so that similar to how we would communicate to teams or team managers, we will we'll look at it that way. So that's the plan there. If you're in a rep program, be prepared. You potentially could be starting on Labor Day weekend. Again, not mandatory. And the other divisions we'd be looking at, you know, a week later, kind of mid-September kind of start times, just so you can get an idea of preparing for that. Don't forget to buy skate guards in the meantime. We'll look to have a future town hall to address some of the specific questions regarding team formation, tryouts, all those type of things as we move into the month of September. We'll update people on the next phase at that point, either ideally via a virtual meeting like this or some other mechanism to do that. So I'll just kick off the slide portion here, and you get to see my face again, and see if there's anything else that we can address via questions or anything.
Sorry, there's a couple questions from the chat that we could probably address. One for initiation and novice. Will they be parent-led sessions or skill provider-led sessions, or a mixture of both?
It will be a mixture of both. Ideally, we're trying to get as many as we can through this skill development phase to be professionally led sessions. But we've got a lot of different ice times to cover here and there, and we don't want to not put kids on the ice because we don't have a instructor available potentially. But so it would be a combination of both, but our goal would be to try and get as much professional instruction as we can for those guys.
Next question is around goalies. What will the skill development look like for them, and will it be led by Magic?
Good question. We will have goalie-specific sessions, so we're trying to carve out some ice time for those as well, and then goalie coaches at several of the cohort practices and skill sessions as well. We'll have goalie coaches at a number of those, particularly on the rep side of things, and then we'll have the clinics. We'll add some of the clinics and those type of things for the other ones. And yeah, Magic will be likely leading that. However, we may look at enhancing that if we need to cover a lot more ice times, that type of thing. We may look at expanding beyond that. We love our goalies, by the way.
And another question regarding safety volunteers. So for safety people on our teams, will there be additional measures in place for COVID or any additional training?
Yes. So Hockey Canada is putting together an additional training piece, a module that they're attaching to the course that safety people will be taking that will upgrade them, so to speak, on the specific protocols that they're looking for from a COVID perspective.
I think that's all for questions, Dave.
Okay.
On the puck dropping.
Oh, we're getting close to puck drop. Okay. Last reminder, if you do have any questions along the way, check in with us. We're happy to try and answer them. We're all in this together. A lot of it's new to us. I don't profess to be this great wise one that has all the answers. We're learning as we go. We're collaborating as much as we can with other groups, other associations, and those type of things. And that's the one thing we've learned from this process, is that collaboration and sharing of information has been very key to get us to where we are right now. And I think hockey's in a great place compared to other sports. So it's we're quite excited about that, but we do need that to continue going on. I really look forward to seeing everyone around the rink. I really miss my semi-hockey family. We've had a couple interactions here at Centennial Arena the last little while that really enjoyed getting out and seeing people again. So we look forward to seeing you more. We'll share as much information as we can, and go Canucks go!